With any of my clients, we always start with your vision. Like, what what do you want? Even look
Right.
10 years from now. Like, what do you want your life to be? What do you want? What is your lifestyle? What do you want when it comes to your career? And why do you want it?
And welcome to the Songwriting Podcast, where we build our songwriting muscles together. My guest today is Diane Foy. She's a personal branding and PR expert who empowers multi-passionate artists, musicians, and actors to slide into the spotlight with the impact and income to match. As a multi-passionate creative entrepreneur, Diane loves that she can draw on her photography, fashion, and makeup artistry experience one day and her journalist, publicist, and marketing experience the next. That diverse background allows her to encourage artists to embrace their authenticity, creativity, and purpose as their unique superpower. And Diane is also the host of the Multi-Passionate Artists podcast, which you should totally subscribe to right now. Well, right after you've subscribed to the Songwriting podcast, of course. But it's fantastic. And Diane introduced me to this multi-passionate concept during our conversation, and you're going to hear me get extremely excited during this conversation because I finally understood that I'm not abnormal. So keep watching because this is going to get really, really interesting. And if you are multi-passionate, or even if you're just an artist who wants to get empowered in terms of personal branding and PR and things like that, you should definitely listen to this episode or watch if you're watching the video, because we get into a lot of great stuff during this conversation. I had a lot of fun talking to Diane, and I can't wait to share it with you. But before we get into my conversation with Diane, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, which is the Indie Bible. If you are an independent artist, you need to be putting your best foot forward and being proactive in your music through radio airplay, reviews, interviews, and features. The Indie Bible will help you build your brand with contact information for over 7,000 radio stations, music blogs, and magazines that want to hear your story and showcase your music. Listings are from the United States, Canada, the UK, Europe, Australia, Asia, and everywhere else. If you're ready to start reaching out and getting some ears on your music, visit songwriting.net/bundle to get instant access to the best deal on the Indie Bible Ultimate Bundle today. If you use that link, you'll be letting them know that I sent you, and that will help me out a lot. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the show, and don't forget to leave comments and reviews wherever you are, because that really helps me to reach more people. If you're serious about your songwriting, visit songwriting.net today and take my new quiz to discover the exact area you should work on today to make your art even stronger than it already is. Songwriting.net also has a bunch of free resources for songwriters, and that's where you'll find the show notes to each episode. All right, let's get into my conversation with Diane Foy. All right, Diane Foy, welcome to the Songwriting Podcast. I hope I got your name right.
Yes. Thank you
good.
so much for having me. This will be fun.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. So I'm very excited to talk to you about a lot of different things because I've been reading some of your stuff and going through your things, and there are a lot of things that you talk about that I'm very excited about, including personal branding and multidisciplinary artists and all kinds of things. But before we get stuck in, I'd love for you to tell us more about yourself, a little bit about your journey and where you come from and so on and so forth.
Cool. I feel like my journey story is so long because I've changed careers a lot. I've done a lot of things, but it's all led me to where I am now.
Yes, that's how it is. We've got time. Don't worry.
Okay. So, in the beginning, no. I've always
You were born
loved
at an
arts and
early
entertainment.
age. Yeah, sorry.
Yes. Arts and entertainment has just been my life. It's what I'm passionate about. And I was way too shy to be a performer myself when I was a kid. So I was attracted to musicians and actors and movies and television, and it was like the world that artists created for us. I just was obsessed with it. And so when it came time to, well, what are you going to be when you grow up? Or high school, when they tell you when you got to pick a career,
Yeah.
I was not sure what I wanted to do, but I was like, I think I need to do something music industry or entertainment industry. So I pulled out my Pat Benatar tour book and went to the back and looked at all the job descriptions. And I either didn't know what they were or wasn't interested. And I saw photographer. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be a photographer. I didn't have a camera or anything. I was just like, I'm going to be a photographer. That's it. So in high school, 11, 12, I was taking photography. Then I did a 2-year intensive technical photography program. And it was a lot of work, but it was what I wanted to, it was my way in. It was my way in to get with artists. And so when I finished school, I also went into fashion photography, and I always wanted to shoot actors and models and musicians. And then I transitioned to be a makeup artist. I was a makeup artist for a long time. And the same pattern is, I had a full-time job as a makeup artist, but on my own time, I was doing music videos and photo shoots with actors and musicians and performers, and all that stuff was exciting to me. Then I did try some music journalism, and obviously I wanted to be in the music industry. And so when I was kind of bored of, you know, the thing about a multi-passionate is we dive in 100% when we're interested in something, and then
Yep.
we kind of get bored. And so that
Yes.
already is why I was a photographer. I was never bored as a photographer. I just fell into makeup, and then that became fascinating. So I just followed it and didn't
Yep.
pick up a camera for a while, and then, but then I was so bored of my makeup job. And again, it was the life I wanted to be around. It wasn't necessarily my love of that art. And so I went to entertainment management school. I learned everything to do with the music business. People that I guess because I'd already been around musicians, people that I'd known for years are telling me, like, seems like you should have been doing this a long time ago. I'm like, why didn't you tell me?
Yeah.
So yeah, I started my publicity company. So I was a music publicist and worked bands, musicians. I After a couple of years, I started doing actors in films and film festivals as well, and artists, and I loved it. I did it for 16 years, and that's a whole other roller coaster of highs and lows. And yes, I've got to work with some famous people, but majority is working with independent artists and helping them go from unknown to known. And over the years, publicity changed, the media's changed. It's harder and harder to get press for independent artists. And it became frustrating that in order to get press, you need to have an artist needs to have like an interesting story. They need to have a professional image. They need to have social media activity. They have to have a fan base, or media doesn't care. Same with
Yep.
the industry. They don't care. Like, no matter how amazing your music is, there's a lot of talented artists.
Yep.
I know sometimes artists get frustrated when they see someone maybe not as talented as you getting all the attention. But why is that? They're
Yeah.
probably putting themselves out there more. And so as a publicist, it was getting frustrating that people would come to me, I got a new album, I got something to promote, I need a publicist. And then I would look at all their stuff and go, honestly, you're wasting your money. You know, PR marketing agencies, they're not cheap. It's expensive. And if you're not ready, you're wasting your money. But a lot of artists, I think they struggle and they just want that quick fix.
Yeah.
And if hiring someone's going to, you know, do all that promotion stuff for them, but then in the end, they're always disappointed in the results
Yeah.
because can only do so much. And so I'd always be like, okay, now go figure out your story, get active on social media, build your fan base, then we can do publicity. And then I felt like they were kind of like, well, but I don't know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it occurred to me that I could have a bigger impact as a coach. And instead of just sending them on their way, wake me up when you got your shit together, as a coach, I'm able to help you do that.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it was a struggle coaching musicians because, PR and marketing, I, I want, yes, I'll hire you as a coach and you can teach me all that marketing and publicity and social media stuff. But they wanted to skip the personal branding. They,
Oh,
they wanted to go straight to promoting. And I'm like, but you don't know what you're promoting yet.
right.
And that's the key, is the personal branding. And so that's kind of how I ended up here. And I love it that it kind of incorporates everything I've done. And, my photography and makeup and fashion industry, that comes into it as well when you're talking about image and branding and personal branding. And it's just like, I feel now it's like a dream job because all this knowledge that I have in my head, because multi-passionates, we're obsessive when we are interested in something. So like, I know so much, I've experienced so much, I've witnessed all kinds of artists, struggle and succeed. And that's how I came up with this fans, media, and industry attraction method. And also even realizing that it's fans, media, and industry is what you need,
Yeah.
because you want to make a living as a musician or an artist, and you're confused, you don't know how to do it. You're like, oh, that's why sometimes you throw out money at marketing firms and PR, because you're like, I don't know what to do. I want to make a living at this. I want people to know who I am and appreciate my art, my creativity. And then I was kind of figuring that, well, you need the fan base. If you don't have that, media and industry don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start to get the fan base, then the media and industry are come. And especially if you have, the fan base, the social media activity, the story to tell, the media starts to be interested, then the industry will come. So, especially with musicians, I always hear like, well, I can't really do much until I get an agent. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so now I can just share all my knowledge. And I created this method where we start with what it is you really want. What's your vision?
Yeah. Your why. So
Your
important.
why. Yeah,
It's,
what do you want and why do you want it?
yeah, exactly. And I think it's so powerful. Anything when it comes to this, I know that us artists, we tend to the business side and the practical things and anything that's not the creative part tends to be, it's we see it as a necessary evil. And then it can be hard also, once you really get the hang of it and you start to know, okay, all right, so I need to do this on social media and I need to have a mailing list and I need to blah blah blah, and then that can take over. And so I've certainly had months where I've done a lot of that stuff, but I haven't written any music. And it's like, well, so you need that balance. And in my experience, all of these things, and not just for artists. I mean, for any kind of entrepreneur, because as artists in today's business, that's what we are. We're entrepreneurs. It can get so overwhelming. You know all the things. You know what to do. I mean, I think everybody gets that. Yeah, you need social media. Yeah, you need PR. Yeah, you need all these things. You need marketing, and we can look up all these things. We can read all the books. We can read all the blogs and listen to all the podcasts. But it's so overwhelming to just think, okay, what's my next step? Where do I go? And that's where I think coaching is so powerful. And I think anybody who's thinking of spending a huge amount of money on marketing or a PR firm or whatever, spend the money on a coach to help you do it yourself, because that's sustainable. It's, I mean, a PR campaign, sure, that can be great. It can also fail, but it can work, but it's one thing. If
Yeah.
you learn to do it yourself, then you're set for your career. Even if you hire somebody later to do it, at least you know what they're
Yeah.
doing and why they're doing it. So I think,
That's my
you know,
mission, is to turn all my clients into like a publicist media agent's dream, you
yeah,
know? Because yes, at some point you're going to want to hire it out, but until you figure out your story, your authenticity, what you're about, and figure out the social media thing, a social media manager can't pretend to be you. They
no,
can't,
exactly.
and they don't know who you are deeply. And until you figure that out, they can only do so much. And same with publicity. You need to figure out all this stuff and start to get your own publicity. Start to get your own press. Like, there's a lot of music blogs you can start with and podcasts, and you work your way up to Rolling Stone. You can't start
Yeah,
at Rolling Stone.
exactly. Not even Dr. Hook
No.
could start
And
with that.
then a publicist or an agent, they can come along and take you to that next level and get those things that you can't get on your own.
Yeah, yeah,
There comes a
exactly.
time for that. But most people want to skip to there and then
and
are
and of course,
frustrated.
because it's overwhelming, it's hard, and you
Exactly.
don't know where to start. I mean, most people don't. So
Yeah.
it can be so hard. So yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about, I've had coaching for my business, and I've had mentors for my music and for my music business and things, and it makes everything so much easier. So
Yeah.
I want to dive into the fans media industry attraction playbook that I've been looking at. And normally I wait until the end, but I just think that anybody listening, we should say right now, where can they get this? Because it's a fantastic resource.
Yeah. You can go to dianefoy.com/freebie and download it there. And it's just this, it gives you the roadmap. It gives you the step by step of what ideally you need to do to get
Yeah.
to where you want to go.
And it's, I mean, again, I've been reading through it, and this is honestly such a fantastic resource. I check out a lot of these free resources online, and a lot of them are fluff and, not, sure, yeah, you get a little bit, but then mostly they're just, this could have been a blog post kind of thing. This
Yeah.
is so much more. This is, I just love it. So, the first thing is personal branding. And like I said before, I love branding. So tell us, like, where do you start when it comes to branding yourself as an artist, when it comes to personal branding?
Yeah. With any of my clients, we always start with your vision. Like, what what do you want? Even look
Right.
10 years from now, like, what do you want your life to be? What do you want? What is your lifestyle? What do you want when it comes to your career? And why do you want it? Because, like, you can want to be Beyonce all you want, but are you going to do the work to
Yeah.
get there? And do you even want that lifestyle? That's not for everyone. That's superstardom.
Hmm.
Like, that's a whole other thing. And we also talk about your core values. If your core values are family and security and, you know, these are not the values of someone who's going to have to be who wants to be a superstar, who's going to make the sacrifices and
Right.
maybe be away from family, or in order to get there, not have security.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's so important to really start with like what it is you really want and why do you want it? Why are you pursuing this career in the arts? And that's kind of usually the most breakthrough session I have with artists, because your first answer is always going to be superficial, like, I love music,
Yeah.
you know? And then the deeper you get into it, it always comes back to a certain event or happening in a childhood that drew you to music, drew you to songwriting. I work with actors and other types of artists as well. It's like, what drives you?
Yeah.
And without that, I find it's too easy to quit, because we all know this is hard.
Oh
It's
yeah.
hard to make a living. It's hard to get there. And if you're going to get knocked down, and if you don't have that core why motivation, you're going to quit. You're going to it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to get back up. And so
Mm.
having that core motivation of why you want this, that picks you back up and makes you keep going. So that's kind of the beginning of personal branding, your core values. We talk about limiting beliefs. We all
Mm-hmm.
have them. I hear musicians often, it's like, oh, social media is a waste of time. And it's like they dismiss it. But it's really just you're afraid of it, you're overwhelmed with it, you don't understand how it works, and it seems way too overwhelming. And it is.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Social media, I'm overwhelmed and exhausted from it. And I know the ins and outs, and
Yeah.
trying to keep up with it, it's hard. And so, yeah, so that is sometimes you have limiting beliefs of like why you don't push your comfort zone for something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you avoid I find anything you procrastinate on, there's probably a limiting belief there that's,
Mm-hmm.
you're holding back. You're nervous to make that phone call you need to make, or put yourself on video, or share your vulnerable stories. That comes next in personal branding.
Mm-hmm. That's,
It's
by the
your
way,
story.
because I've suffered from anxiety, and that the worst thing you can do when you have anxiety about something is not do it,
Yeah.
because then you're perpetuating it and you're rewarding the avoidance, because you feel
Yeah.
better when you don't do it. So I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt who said you should do something every day that scares you or something like that. So
Yeah. And it gets easier the
always,
more you push yourself. Like,
yeah,
I'm not the performer, I'm the behind the scenes girl. But these days, everyone has to be visible and put
oh yeah,
themselves out there and tell stories and be vulnerable. And that's just the way it is. So I've had to suck it up and do it too. So, and the more you do it, the easier it gets. And so the next part of personal branding, and basically the core of everything, is storytelling.
yes,
It's, what is your story? If I read one more bio of so and so grew up in, he's this old, she's in this city, he had the guitar. Oh my God, who cares? Like, that's what most bios of independent artists read. And tell me something that really grabs me. And so I work with artists and we explore your story. Like, what are the highlights? Again, what is your why? But what, experiences have you had along the way that drew you to music? What is your story? What are your interests outside of music? What are your passions? What, whether knowledge or experiences, all of this is great storytelling.
hmm
And yes, you want to write a bio that's interesting, but these days, again, with social media, you need more than one story. So it's cultivating these stories that you're going to share, that is going to connect with people.
Yeah.
And if you think about your favorite artists, you probably love them for more than just their music.
Oh, yeah.
You love them because you love their personality. You love the way they look, the way they dress, the way they, or maybe they've shared something vulnerable about them that you could relate to. There's so much into it that you're like, that makes you be a super fan of someone.
Yes.
And without that, oh, that's a good song. I mean,
Hmm.
forget all about you the
Yeah.
next 5 minutes when another song comes on. But then the next song comes on, and when I go to check them out, there's an interesting story there that draws me in, or there's an interesting image that draws me in to find out more.
Yeah.
And then you go down that rabbit hole, and the more you go down, and you keeps your interest. Well, okay, I'm a fan of that artist now,
Hmm.
and so that's the importance of storytelling. Personal branding, it also involves your image, like especially for performing artists who they are the art.
Hmm.
You need to have like a consistent professional image, but it has to be authentic. I'm all about the authentic personal branding. So, years ago, labels would put a brand on you or an image on you. I'm not about that. And I think that's why sometimes artists shy away from PR and marketing. I sometimes try not to even use the marketing terms with artists because they just,
But
they want to shy
what I
away from it.
realized, what I realized when I started studying marketing, because I'd been interested in marketing and doing marketing for my own businesses for years, and then I enrolled in getting a master's degree in marketing, and I realized that marketers are terrible at marketing themselves
Oh, yeah.
because people generally don't understand what marketing is, and it has a terrible reputation. It's just like a four-letter word for
Yeah.
most people in society, and that's because marketers are, it's like the doctor who's always sick or the mechanic who always drives a broken down car.
Yeah.
It's, we're not good at working for ourselves sometimes.
And also, like artists, our brains work differently,
Yeah.
And so I've gone to school for many things. And there's always a marketing course. Like
Hmm.
in my photography, there was a marketing course. Makeup, well, not as much. That taught you nothing. Some artist schools don't teach you anything about marketing. Um, Music business, marketing. But they're regular college marketing courses. They're not tailored to artists. And
Right.
so how does learning how to market a soda help me as an artist? Like, I
Yeah.
don't get it. And even in entertainment management school, the marketing course was very focused on buying radio ads and doing those kind of things. And I'm still going, but the artist brain, like, how am I supposed to promote myself?
Hmm.
And so it's very different. And that's why I think I love what I can do, because I take all that marketing knowledge that I've gained and translate it into how artists can understand it and why it's important and what it is. And so
Yeah.
that's why when I add that, I'm about authentic personal branding. And also I'm quick to tell you that personal branding is just you. It's not it
Hmm.
all it is who you are, what you stand for, what do you believe in, what your interests are, your personality. That's your brand.
Yep. Do you
There's
ever
no
find that artists have trouble figuring that out, like articulating who
Yeah.
they are?
Yeah. Well, like a lot of us, we don't take the time to really explore our own life and our own interests. And so many, even starting with, well, what do you want? What is your vision for your future? I don't know. you know, no one
Yeah.
stopped to think about that. Or what are your core values? So many never even thought about that.
Yeah.
What do you believe in? And knowing your core values, it's like And that's why sometimes this amazing opportunity comes. And so you go for it because you'd be crazy to turn it down, but not thinking if it's really what you want. And so you go
Hmm.
down that hole and then wonder why in the end you're not happy with this success that you got. And it's a lot of times because maybe it doesn't match what you really want, what your values are. And so
Yeah.
by learning and taking the time to explore who you are, your why, core values, beliefs, then when an opportunity comes up, you can, okay, evaluate it. Does this opportunity match what it is I really want? And does it match my core values?
Yeah.
And what degree? It's, and just even evaluating your story. Like sometimes you ask like more about someone's story, they just never really thought about it.
Yeah.
And some people do look back. I'm more of a looking forward, so I don't. Sometimes it's something for me to even look back at my experience and go, okay, yeah, that's these are interesting stories to tell. So it's just taking the time to evaluate it, and sometimes it does take someone else to point out what's interesting about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, a
Absolutely.
lot of times artist bios, it's like boring, 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 boring. Oh my god, something amazing at the end of the bio, and you're like,
Yeah.
we need to move that to the front.
Yeah.
It's, and you
I,
think,
I,
oh,
I have this when I first started, creating a website and marketing my music online properly. Um, I I had a lot of I got in sort of in the weeds. I got lost in the weeds trying to articulate what I'm about and in a way that also I knew would appeal to fans of that kind of music. I play sort of Americana, blues, country, folk music, that kind of stuff. And so I spent a long time, and eventually I sort of went into sort of looking at the artists that I take inspiration from and sound like, which are people like Tom Waits, Nick Cave, Neil Young, that sort of stuff. And so I kind of borrowed aesthetics and some phrases and things like that from those kind of artists, and it was fine. It worked, but I don't think it was authentically me.
yeah,
Um, but it was good. I mean, it did appeal to the right kind of people and all of that. But then I was kind of going over it a couple of years later, and I was sort of thinking, well, maybe I need to change things around a little bit and revise things as you do. And then I did what you were saying. I just asked someone. I said, well, if you had to describe my music, this was a friend of mine who's listened to everything I've done and who I trust to tell me the right things. I said, if you had to describe my music to someone, like, how would you do it? And he said, well, it's comforting. It's sort of nice to sit around and just put on the record and have a cup of hot chocolate. And I was kind of, that's not, because I was kind of going, leaning more into like, you know, drinking and, hey, you have a shot of whiskey and smoke a cigar and that kind of thing,
yeah,
which is obviously imagery that is connected with that kind of music. But I sort of, oh yeah. And so I decided to try it out. And so I changed everything and I started referring to it as comfort food for the ears and leaning into the, you just sit back, under a blanket, it's raining outside, and you have a nice cup of tea and sitting by the fire and really leaned into describing all the different sensations, because I find that when you're selling art, it's a lot of times, especially when you go through traditional marketing things, it's always find the pain point, what's the negative, what problem are you solving, and
yeah,
it usually starts from a negative point of view. But with art, obviously you're not solving a problem, you're enhancing people's lives, and so you have to start from something positive. And so I started really trying to describe all five senses in my copy, sort of sneaking in taste and smells and sensations. And I found that it aligned a lot more with my values again, because I'm like a homebody. I'm not somebody who likes to go out and party. I used to, but I'm
Yeah.
old now. And so when I enjoy music, I like to just put on a vinyl record and sit and have a cup of tea, maybe read a book, and that's me. And so that aligned a lot closer with my values, and I found that the people it attracted were, more interested in what I had to say.
Yeah. There's two thoughts came when you were saying, like, that's another part is personal branding is what other people think and say about you from what they, sorry,
Yeah, no
from
problem.
what they, sorry, I'll start over. So personal branding is what the people say about you when you're not in the room. Like, what is the impression you left? And so
Yeah,
it is good to ask people who know you well and see, like, what words come up when you think about me and what I do,
yeah,
and what is your impression of it. And maybe what they say is not what you were going for at all. So that's a good thing to know.
yeah. That's what was my experience.
Yeah. And so it's important to kind of see what people think of you in that sense. And then when it comes to art, in when we're learning, when we're beginning, of course we're going to copy, our mentors, and
Yeah,
it's what we're drawn to. We're trying to figure out them, and then the next phase is figuring out your own style.
I
So
think
we
Tom
all
Waits
go through
said
that.
all artists are imitating other artists and doing a bad job.
Yeah.
I think I think that's kind of where it all starts. And also, there was somebody who said, and I quote this almost every single episode because it's my favorite quote in the world, and I still haven't figured out who said it. In my memory, it feels like it might have been Quincy Jones, but I've Googled the hell out of this and I can't find the quote.
Okay.
But the quote is, "Find out who you are and be the shit out of that." That's my favorite quote, and that's the best advice I've ever gotten as an artist.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes it takes us a while to really be ourselves.
Yeah.
It's like if you're entering, the fashion industry or music industry, and you're like experiencing what everyone else is in it for. Sometimes you get swept up into it and the rock and roll lifestyle and all that stuff, and it's like, but at some point it's good to kind of figure out, well, what is it that you really want? And what do
Hmm.
you stand for? And also putting yourself out there, not everyone's going to get you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But the ones that get you, they're going to get you. And they get the because you're sharing authentically and you're sharing who you really are. Because if you're not, then you may never, you may not have people hating you or loving you because it's just, you're okay. You so it's better to just say your opinions, say who you are. Some people will get it, some people won't, some people will like it, some people won't, but that's okay, because then that's your true fans, true people that appreciate you.
Yeah. One thing that I it really helped me get get over my fear of sharing, because I've, like I said, I have anxiety. I had a lot of trouble getting my music out there and getting a lot of things out there. And one of the things that helped me get over that fear was the realization that most people never ever think about you. Like, people in general spend almost no time thinking
Yeah.
about you. And even if you do something embarrassing or whatever, something happens that is exactly what you were afraid of or whatever, nobody's going to care. Like, unless you hurt someone, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. I know, and it's me putting myself out there too. It's like I before I could be behind the scenes, and now I'm trying to learn how to tell the right stories in emails and posts, and um, I had a story because I'm in a copywriting program as well. And I wrote this story like last July. And I was so proud of it. It was such a good story. But I kept onto it. I didn't release it because, well, that's one story. I gotta, if I'm gonna send emails regularly or share this as a blog post, I want to have the follow up to it. I never got there. So it's been sitting
Yeah.
there. I finally put it out. Nobody cares.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, well. But I'm proud of the story. It will give me inspiration to come up with more stories. But yeah, it's like you just have to be okay with that. And tell more stories, like keep going and putting yourself out there because
Yeah.
and also when you start to share more vulnerability about yourself, when I started doing that, it's like such a huge thing to tell this story that's really not personal at all, but I feel it is. And then you put it out there and it's no big deal. And so the more you do it, the more you get comfortable doing it. And it's not as big of a deal.
And it's, and of course, people have different comfort zones, and some things are too far outside the comfort zone. And so that's something that everybody needs to figure out for themselves. But I have
Yeah.
found that the more I'm willing to step outside my comfort zone and be vulnerable and share things, and this is just on my personal, like, Facebook account and all different things like that, just share the struggles that I'm going through personally and sharing very personal things. Uh, it really gets a lot of uh, reactions, very positive reactions, and those things make sure that that's, again, it makes you stand out. And I know that a lot of the people that have been interacting with those things that I've been expressing myself about, they're going to remember me the next time they need somebody with my skill set, the next time they,
Yeah.
they want a collaborator or whatever. I'm going to be on their minds. And that's, I think, at least my experience with, personal branding is it's a very long game.
Yeah. There's no overnight. And it's always evolving. I don't know how
Hmm.
many times I rewrite my intro to my bio or rewrite my bio, change my title like so many times.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. I don't know how many websites I have for different things that I do. It's
yeah.
exhausting to keep them all updated and,
That's why I've embraced multi-passionate artists
yeah.
because I was that way too. I would have a website for publicity. I'd have a website for photography. Then I started making jewelry, and then I had a mental health blog, and no one knew I did any of it because
Yeah.
it's too much. As
Yeah.
separate lives, it's hard to keep up. And one day I just decided it was maybe a year where I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. I was bored of publicity, and I was just like, I'm going to put everything on dianefoy.com and see where it goes. And I might do photography again. I don't know. And everyone told me it was a horrible idea and you're going to confuse your audience. All
Yeah.
this traditional advice. No, you need to pick one thing. Why would you give up your company name that everyone knows and all this stuff? And I went, I'm going to do it anyways and see where it goes. And then I was like, no, I think it is good to kind of share everything that you are. And if you're multi-passionate, then you can't just pick where I learned that it's a personality trait, the multi-potentiality. And I saw Emily Wapnick's TED Talk, and all was right with the world. I don't know if you've seen this TED Talk, but Emily
I have
Wapnick,
not.
ah, and she is she basically talks about how, when you're a kid and people say, what are you going to be when you grow up? And if you kind of said five different things, the adult in your life probably said, that's cute, but you need to pick one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she started telling her own story. And it was like she was telling my story. The job descriptions or interests might be different, but it was like, when she wanted to do this and she was full on, she was like in a punk band. Maybe you've heard of us. And she's just like, going into that. Then I wanted to be a lawyer. I went to law school and I did all of that. And then I wanted to do this. And each time, after a while, when you do that, you start to think there's something wrong with you, because why can't I just stick with one thing? Why do I get bored after I
Mm-hmm.
learn enough about something? And I want to go over here of like, discover this new thing. And then you want to learn everything to do it. It's your new calling. And so she's telling this story. And then what it is, it's the multi-potentialite. You're a multi-potentialite, or it's a psychology term, multi-potentiality. And so it's a mindset that it's just we're wired differently than everyone else. And and then she goes on about telling about what the superpowers are of being a multi-potentialite, because we can pick up things so fast because we're always learning new things. So being
Yeah.
a beginner is we just pick up things really fast. We have so much knowledge and experience to draw on that we're very creative. And it was like, see, I knew I was right when I saw that TED Talk.
Yes.
It's like, I knew I was right. And so more and more people are embracing this multi-potentialite, multi-passionate, and saying it's okay. And so even at that time, I still kind of fell into taking everyone's advice and only focusing on coaching. But I feel now that I can kind of just be like, it's part of your brand. And my favorite clients have been musicians, actors who also have other things. And they would
Yeah.
come to me. As my branding and marketing used to be very, I help musicians and actors. And so musicians and actors would come to me and I'd start to work with them, and I would learn that yes, I'm a singer-songwriter, but I'm also a yoga instructor and I'm really interested in sound healing. And I would get excited
Yeah.
that you want to do all those things. Or you're a singer-songwriter and you're a filmmaker animator? That's cool. And to them it was surprising that I was excited about it, because everyone else says you're confusing. It's like too much,
Yeah.
So I've embraced it, and now I want to draw in. If you're one of those people, I get you. I understand you.
Oh my God, it's like you're describing me. I'm uh I'm a theater director. That's my first master's degree, and now I'm
Yeah.
getting my second in marketing. I'm a writer. I've published a novel, and I've written several ones.
Yeah.
I mean, songwriting is my sort of main thing, but I'm also like my job in songwriting has mostly been in theaters, where I'm an
Okay.
actor as well.
Right.
And so a lot of the things that I've done has been, writing music for shows and then also performing in them and acting in them. And that's, I think, where I'm the happiest, because it's like I'm doing multiple things at the same time, and it's
Yeah.
great. Oh man, I know what you mean. And I'm now like trying, and although, I do I love what you're saying about embracing it, but I do sometimes have to like stop myself. Like the other day, I was lying in bed and I had this business idea, and like half the night was gone, and I was like, I had this whole thing. Like, yeah, no, yeah, I can just do this, and then I can, until I was like, yeah, okay, but I'm kind of in the middle of a of a thing here. I should probably see that through before starting a new business. So
Yes.
so I do try to exercise some self discipline when it comes to these things. But I loved what you were just saying about, yes, this is who we are, and obviously listen to this TED Talk, you're going to have to send me a link to that.
Yes. And also, there's a book that you should read of what you just mentioned, Barbara Shear. She's actually the one of the very first people to talk about this personality trait. Emily's just the newer, younger one that's
Right.
putting it out there, but Barbara Shear has a book called Refuse to Choose,
Oh,
and
cool.
she calls us scanners. Then there's also a book called The Renaissance Souls. We're Renaissance souls.
Yes.
Emily calls us multi-potentialites, and she even says she thinks it's funny that as a community we can't agree on what we're called.
Yeah.
But Barbara Shear, in her book Refuse to Choose, has a really good idea. I haven't actually implemented it yet, but she suggests for all of us that have a million ideas all the time, sometimes we can be satisfied with just fleshing out the idea.
Yeah.
And we may return to it one day later and we might not. But she has this idea of having this book. And when you get that idea for that new business or that new product or that new piece of art, you could, draw it, write it, get it all out on the paper. And then sometimes that's enough and you're satisfied and you'll move on.
Yeah.
Or you might continue with it. But I kind of like that idea of having a book where you can capture all your ideas. And I thought about starting that because I always have like jewelry ideas. But right now, my focus is not that. So I have to kind of put it aside.
Yeah.
That's a thing. Like, what really helped me was I hate the advice of you can't do something or,
Oh,
yeah,
the worst thing you can say to me, you can't do
don't
that.
tell me I can't do something. But it is true that we can't do it all at once.
That is
And
true.
so, how you were saying, like, you can't follow that business idea now because you have other priorities. And I
Yeah.
think that's also true to like figure out what your priorities are. And so, it helped that I didn't have to say goodbye to all the million things I want to do, but I can put them on hold, put them in this box over here,
Yeah.
and focus on your number one priority. What is the one thing that you can kind of make something out of, make a career, make money? What is going to
Hmm.
get that going? Then, when that's kind of a success or enough, then you can add that next thing in. And next thing is layering.
Yeah.
I use J Lo as a great example of that because, she's global superstar Jennifer Lopez, but she didn't start out doing all that. She was a
Right.
dancer. Then she wanted to be an actor. She was an actor. Then she was a singer.
Hmm.
Then she can start mingling it all together. And
Yes.
now she keeps adding more and more things. And so that's as artists. And I think this idea about Barbara Shear is having this book is like, we can have all of our ideas and even inspiration when we're thinking about something else. We can look through it and go, huh, I forgot about that idea. I should use
Yeah.
that over here.
Yeah.
So
I
yes.
love that. I'm in a mastermind group. And for anybody out there who doesn't know what a mastermind group is, it's basically a group that you meet to stay motivated to do whatever it is that you're doing and keep yourself accountable. And so I'm actually in a couple, but I'm in one like business mastermind group where we meet every 2 weeks. And there's this great thing that we do where we together identify the one thing we can do that's going to have the most impact in our
Yeah.
business over the next 2 weeks. And we commit to doing that one thing over those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I think that's great for this. And I try to implement this in other areas of my life as well. Even when it's just me, I have like a planner where I do this week by week and quarter by quarter and things. And where I just say, okay, I know I can't do everything that I want to do, but what's the one thing that I can do this week, or maybe two or three things that are going to move the needle for me, that are going to get me closer to my goals. And I think that's really helped me stay focused a little bit. And, and for I recommend this for my clients, for songwriters, to say, okay, yes, you may want to, and especially because, again, like I said, sometimes it's hard to see the forest for the trees when it comes to all the different PR things and social media and whatnot that we have to do, and that we need to have like a routine around those things to just do them, and make them sort of automatic. But it's easy to lose sight of, okay, I mean, are you still creating songs? Because as a songwriter, if you're not writing songs, then you're not gonna. It's not 1970 anymore, where you can release an album and then tour and make a ton of money. You
Yeah.
have to be producing more and more stuff.
Yeah.
That's the fact of the matter. It's all about your output. Like, your income is going to be proportional to your output.
Yeah.
And that, of course, also in terms of stories for social media and your mailing list and what have you. But so you need to every now and then just stop and think, okay, is my next step, I mean, is this what will bring me the most benefit, the thing that I'm doing right now, or is there something else that I could be doing that's going to move me further along?
Yeah.
So I think
And
that's like, for people like us, that's a very good thing to have in mind quite often, is like, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and it feels like work. It feels like, I'm not just browsing YouTube, but is it moving me closer to my goal?
yeah, it's too easy to get distracted and go down the hole of, social media.
Yep.
But I work with artists too, just how to set goals and how to, and I am one that struggles with it too. So, like, I'm with you, but I've
Yeah.
learned the strategy, and sometimes I have to take my own advice. And sometimes when I used to be very go with the flow.
Yeah.
Wherever, and that's why I would go in different directions and for sometimes not be very successful because I forget about the whole money making thing you're supposed to be doing. And, be like, I'm going to go do this and I'm going to do that. And it helps to really, how I was saying, we talk about the vision, but then we talk about, okay, what are like the main goals for your year? And
Yeah.
break it down. Like, okay, if that's what you want to accomplish a year from now, then break it down. What do you need to do for the next 12 months? What
Hmm.
do you need to do in month 12? What do you need to do in month 10, month 6, month 3? And you
Yep.
get it, you break it down. It helps you figure out whether it's realistic because we always overshoot it. So sometimes we have to adjust the timeline
Well, or undershoot it.
or undershoot it.
It's,
Maybe it doesn't take as long
I
as we
had
thought.
to. I was just actually, a couple of episodes ago, I went through this whole. That's a big part of my coaching program as well. Is just setting like the right goals. The goals
Right.
that you need to set, and set them in the correct way.
Yeah.
And my friend, my client, who I was going through that with, his original goal was like, like his 1 year goal was what he should have done as his 3 month goal.
Right.
So, I was like, no, 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 you can't take a year to do this. No, you do this in 3 months, and then, then we shoot for that in 12 months. And so I think goals need to, I don't know if you know smarter goals, but
Yeah.
one of the things in there is risky. The goal needs to be, you need to stretch it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I find I guess I underestimate how much time things are going to take.
Yeah, I tend to do that as well, but it's either or.
Yeah.
So this has been so, we could talk for days, I think. But I think, before we say goodbye, uh, first of all, let's just say it again. It's Diane Foy /freebie. That's
Yes.
where you get the playbook, and everybody. I mean, we've only scratched the surface. I thought we would go through everything that's in there,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we've gone
We
through
got to
like,
number 2.
we're on page 5
There we go.
of 14. So we,
Okay.
yeah, we
I
hardly
feel they're the
scratched the
most
surface.
important parts.
Yeah.
I feel like the social media publicity stuff, like, that can come later. If you
Yeah.
don't have those first stuff that we talked about, you're not going to have much success with the others.
You need a solid foundation.
Yeah.
But you also have a podcast.
Yes. And I've changed the name of that.
Of course.
It was the Sing, Dance, Act, Thrive podcast for about, I don't know, 60 some odd episodes. Because I was focused on the performing artists, the singers, dancers, actors. That's what I was more focusing on. And I would interview more successful. I interviewed a little bit more celebrity types and had some solo shows, but it's really only, even though I've known about the multi-potentialite, multi-passionate, and I've still described myself as a multi-passionate, but I haven't gone kind of all in on it until like maybe last fall.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, you know what? I'm tired of compartmental. I can't even say that word, but like how you put everything in different lives and different boxes and keep them separate.
Compartmentalize.
Yes.
I had to use that word earlier this evening, and I ran into the same trouble, so I've trained my mouth now. So I'll say it for you: compartmentalize.
Yeah. And I do say that, they have been my favorite clients, but I just decided to go all in. And, even my bio, even though I said I'm a multi-passionate creative, there was really no thing about that I was a photographer, that I was a makeup artist, that I was all these other things. And so I'm starting to embrace that. And I think even in the coaching world, I was listening to that advice of like, you got to niche down. Because when I first started coaching, it'd be like, all creatives, all artists is who I want to help. Yes, most of my experience has been with performing artists, but I'm not a performing artist. I'm a photographer, a makeup artist, visual artist. So why can't I serve all? But, the niching advice, you got to niche down. So then I was like, performing artists. Okay, but then is it all performing artists? I'm like, okay, fine. It's musicians and actors. And they still want you to go even further and pick one. But I refused. So that's how I was really like focusing on musicians and actors, but any musician and actor. And so now I find when I really go in on multi-passionate musicians and actors and all artists, that it is that artist, that musician that also does these other things. And I do all these other things. So I figured by changing the podcast to multi-passionate artists, it opens it up that I can interview different types of artists. And so that's interesting to me. And I feel like with all that separating, even working with musicians and actors, it's like, why don't you guys talk to each other? Because you can learn so much from each other's industries and how you build it. And so that's kind of the point of embracing multi-potentialites, multi-passionate, and also just to open it up to other artists besides musicians and actors. Musicians and actors are still my heart, so that's who I focus, but it's interesting to talk to other types of artists as well. So that's my podcast. I hope to add more solo shows and sharing more of my knowledge. But there we go. It's multi-passionate artists. And basically anything you can get from the dianefoy.com. There's links to everything there. So
yeah. And I'll put a link in the show notes as well. I mean, thanks so much. I've had a blast. I'm so excited about all this stuff. And you've introduced me to why I now know why I am the way I am, and I didn't know that before talking to you. So,
amazing!
This has been a real learning experience.
Well, that's the other reason I've embraced multi-passionate, because so many multi-passionate or multi-potentialites don't even know that they are.
Yeah.
So that's why I've gone all in on it.
And I applaud you for it. I'm subscribing. I'm listening to every single episode, and I hope everybody who's listening will do that as well. Thanks again so much.
Thank you.
And I hope to talk to you later.
Great.